Hello, this is David of The Savage Experience with a review of Martin Scorsese's latest, Hugo, an adaptation of The Invention of Hugo Cabret. Now, the selling point of the film is that you get to see it in 3D. Now, of course, the prices of the tickets are going to be a little bit more expensive, but trust me when I say this is the best 3D experience that for me, I have had. That how Martin Scorsese uses the 3D to tell the story, how he uses it when it comes to the visuals. It feels like you are right there in the movie. The steam, the snow, there's one particular, there are a couple particular sequences I want to mention. The first is the opening, and that is how the camera moves through Paris and it goes through the train station and it just goes past all these people, and then it ends on a close-up on Hugo's face. It's just brilliantly done. And then how you follow Hugo as he goes and fixes the clocks and sees the people there who go from train to train, or people who work there. It's just like clockwork, which makes sense because Hugo is in charge of maintaining the clocks after his uncle goes missing. And it is a brilliant sequence. It does feel like you're on a roller coaster. And another sequence is the station inspector, played by Sacha Baron Cohen, who is brilliant in the role. He is not only funny, he has good slapstick moments, but he's also touching in his performance. And there's a scene where he suspects Hugo and his friend Isabel, played by Chloe Moretz, of being orphans, and just how he gets closer into their faces and looms, and he gets closer and closer and closer. And the 3D effect is great because you feel just how uncomfortable those two characters are. That here's the station inspector, he's feels like he's getting right there in your face. And I admit that while it was happening, I was going back like this. And of course I know that in one part of my mind I'm thinking, well, this is a film, of course he's not really, but the other half is going, I really do feel that, and it's so effectively done that it isn't like a gimmick where most 3D, where you see it, is sort of like, hey, what's that over there? Let me go grab it. And then it goes in, and that whole 3D effect, the cheap gimmick like that. But in this case, it is done for the sake of the story and for the characters. I mean, it's the same thing when it comes to James Cameron's Avatar, where in spite of the issues with some of the plot, and the story, I mean, I can't deny the fact that the 3D wasn't used to help with the story and with the characters. That it was more focused on filmmaking instead of cheap gimmicks when it comes to that film. Now, another thing when it comes to 3D, I mean, one other bit that I really liked is that I just want to mention this film called House of Wax. That's starring Vincent Price. It's a classic, film for Price. So if you're a huge fan of him, I'd recommend you check out House of Wax. Now, just to refresh my memory, the director Andre de Toth, who directed this, was being in 3D. He only had one working eye. So get that. He's making a film in 3D, and he only has one working eye, meaning he can't see the 3D. Is that I absolutely love it, but it turns out to be one of the best 3D films. I mean, yeah, there's some gimmicks with it when it comes to there's a paddle ball sequence where the paddle ball going back and forth and it's going right into your face. However, I still feel that is Andre de Toth being a little subversive when it comes to 3D. That he's, because of how silly and ridiculous it is, you get that sense that he's being playful. But anyways, we're going back to Hugo, and just to go by when it comes to like the characters, it's the one thing I really loved about the film is that there isn't a villain. I mean, true, the station inspector is an antagonist, is the antagonist, but he's not a bad guy. I mean, we know about his history that he fought during the Great War. That's World War I, and he injured his leg so severely that he can only walk with a brace, and just this brace is just, he needs to oil it repeatedly. It's always making a terrible noise, which also when it comes to the sound mixing and sound editing, it's perfect, that squeak that it makes. And you can tell that he's embarrassed by it, and it falls in love with the flower girl, who's played by Emily Mortimer. He's infatuated with her, and you can sense that he's just embarrassed by this leg, that he wants to go up to her and profess his love, but he really can't gain the confidence to do so. But when he's finally able to, it makes for a really touching scene, and they have this connection that isn't sappy or melodramatic, but it earned it. It's the same thing with another romantic relationship between the woman who owns the cafe and the man who sells the newspapers. They're played by Francis Delator and Richard Griffiths, who, if you watch the Harry Potter films, you'd recognize them from those films. And it's also a nice, sweet relationship there. And I mean, that's just what ultimately comes down to, is that it is a very sweet film, that it doesn't really just, even the one terrible character, that's the uncle played by Ray Winstone. I mean, he's shown as this disgusting, unshaven drunk who chain smokes. He's just a disgusting looking character. But the film, I think you only see him for less than 5 minutes, and after that, he's gone. Is that the film doesn't have time to deal with somebody like that. That we're focused more on like just good people. And in particular, the character Georges Melies, played by Ben Kingsley, in this wonderfully touching performance. And how, if to those who don't know who Georges Melies is one of the pioneers of filmmaking and special effects editing. This was a man who loved making films. And this movie, beyond the story of Hugo trying to fix this, I believe it's pronounced Automon, this little robot that was given to him by his late father, played by Jude Law, trying to figure out what is this message that this robot will find out. It's a message from his father, and that is brilliantly done. But it's also about this old filmmaker trying to reconnect with his past and trying to accept what has happened, the terrible things that's happened. That I won't spoil, but I will say that is true what happened to Georges Melies in that film. That's because it does take a documentary point of view on what happened to Melies. And that sequence, which is in the second half of the film, is probably the best sequence. It is such it runs the gauntlet of emotions, that you feel that you're happy, that you feel his enthusiasm for filmmaking, and then you feel how tragic and sad it is that he can no longer make films. It's quite brilliantly done, and Ben Kingsley does a phenomenal job narrating it. You get this feeling in flashbacks that he's got this welcoming. He makes it to where you feel like you want to just see him smile, right? That he feels like he could be your uncle. That's what he is. He's uncle. He's Papa Georges. Actually, not uncle, but he's I believe the godfather to Isabel. And he is such a warm character in the past that you just want to see him be like that before you wish nothing but the best for him. I mean, there are just so many lovely scenes like that. And it's a film that really just promote not only like passion for film, but just love of anything you do. Not just, there's also Isabel's love of books. And Hugo himself, not as passionate about books as she is, but he recalls that he would read Jules Verne and Robin Hood. There's this great scene where he bumps into the owner of the bookstore, Monsieur Lebis. He's played by Christopher Lee, and Christopher Lee, like when it comes to films like Horror of Dracula, he is like this tall, imposing, deep-voiced character, and the film is like he's got this very nice, lovely bookstore, but still he's intimidating. That when he looks down at Hugo, when he first is introduced to him, you get this feeling that he doesn't like the boy, that I don't trust him. But then when they bump into each other, and Hugo and Monsieur Lebis drops this book, it's a Robin Hood, and he tells Lebis about the fact that this was a book that I believe that he saw the film with Douglas Fairbanks, but he connected with the book. And there's this connection to where Lebis realizes that Hugo is an intelligent young boy that wants to learn, to experience, explore new things, gain new information, and just how he hands the book to him, and just this respectful tone he has and smile. It's a lovely, lovely scene. And if it turns out this is if Christopher Lee does, because man is getting on in his years, and this is one of his final roles, it is a lovely role to go out on, that he shows just how sweet, and how he can play sweet, good-natured characters. That he isn't just Mr. Bad Guy. That he isn't Saruman, Dracula, Count Dooku, or Francisco Scaramanga. And when it comes to the film itself, I mean, there's just so many just lovely little moments. There are 2 dream sequences that Hugo has. And that's the one thing about Scorsese that I love, that even though Scorsese, he's going to be 70 years old next year, it feels like that the direction of the film feels like somebody who's in their 20s, that this is somebody who's just so full of life. And in every single frame that something is going on, that he's injected it with just this pulse, this rhythm that I love about his movies. That to see a Martin Scorsese film once isn't seeing it at all. You'd have to see it multiple times. Even like his lesser efforts. It's like Bringing Up the Dead, I'm not the biggest fan of, but seeing it again, I realize what he's going for. It makes for just these gorgeous pictures. Now, when it comes to the film itself, if you're interested in like the history of film, I'll just give you a couple ones here. Like, if you've noticed this is Harold Lloyd. They went to Hugo takes Isabel, who has been told you cannot go see a film by Papa Georges. You cannot go. He takes her to see, pulling out here, Safety Last. This is seen as Harold Lloyd's classic, and also in the film that there are many moments that do that reference other movies. If you've seen the poster of Hugo, that you see him hanging on the clock, that's Safety Last. That's reference to that. And when it comes to if you're interested in the early history of film, if you want to know about the Lumiere brothers, or Thomas Edison, or even Georges Melies, I picked up this box set from Amazon, I believe like 3 or 4 years ago. It's called The Movies Begin. It's a lovely box set. I mean, not only, and of course it's got D.W. Griffith, the great train robbery, you see that, where that great shot of the cowboy looking in the camera and he fires the gun. Scorsese referenced that in Goodfellas. And in particular, when it comes to Georges Melies, they have one volume, that's volume 4, dedicated to Melies. And his films are incredibly gorgeous, and of all the silent films, they're the ones that have aged the best. And are definitely the most influential. I mean, when you see a film like Lord of the Rings, or Star Wars, or the Harry Potter series, James Bond, any film that uses a visual effect, you have to owe debt to Georges Melies. I mean, that is just how influential he is as a filmmaker. And I would definitely check that out. Or if you can definitely, I'm pretty certain that you can see these films on YouTube. I'm pretty certain that they are public domain films. Definitely take a second to watch them, because they are short films. They're around usually 10-15 minutes, so they're not going to take a lot of time out of your day. But do yourself a favor and do so. And then to quickly go back to the technical achievements, I mean, art direction, Dante Ferretti, who lovingly recreates not only Paris, but the film sets of Georges Melies. He's the front runner to win a 3rd Oscar, and deservedly so. There's a reason why he's considered one of the best, if not the best, production designers out there, and this film proves it. Robert Richardson, also one of the best at his field of cinematography, making a 3D film, and he just shows how brilliant he still is as a cinematographer. Thelma Schoonmaker, that's Scorsese's editor, still does a lovely job of not only going through old footage to show the history of film, but to also keep a good, steady pace for it. I mean, it is a lovely film. It is a tribute to movies, but it's just a tribute just to learning, to love of anything, a love of film, of literature, of action figures, of sports, just anything that you love and a passion that you just want to go and do. It celebrates that. It celebrates intelligence. It celebrates love. That is what Hugo is about, and it is one of Scorsese's best films. And I would definitely recommend it to anyone who has any interest of seeing whatsoever. And if you're turned off by the trailers, don't. The trailers do not represent this film. That it isn't just this goofy slapstick movie. It isn't. It is a lovely movie, and it is a frontrunner for I believe it is a frontrunner for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. I do believe Scorsese might even win his 2nd Best Director Oscar. I mean, that's how good a job he does with the film when it comes to his technical achievements, his acting, the acting of how he directed his actors, the acting of particularly the children. I mean, they're just brilliant acting, a brilliant ensemble. You can tell that it is from the heart. That one thing I do remember, one last thing, is that when Scorsese was growing up, he had films and he had the window right there, because the man had and still does asthma, and he couldn't go out, so he had this window that he could look out and see what was going on. And you can definitely find that connection between himself and Hugo. That here they are, these two intelligent people looking out their windows, young boys, and just seeing the clockwork and having their own imagination run wild. I definitely recommend seeing Hugo. Go see it as soon as you can, especially in theaters. And if you can, in 3D. If you're not a big fan of 3D, I would pass. But if you're okay with it, go see it in 3D. It is the best experience in 3D. So this is David of The Savage Experience signing off, and hope you all have a lovely day.